So for today, the goal is that we give you we have released a new tool that gives you the ability to understand and review what your team has built inside of Langdock. So the bunch of agents, skills, people are exploring the platform, are creating new things. That of course is always a bit tricky to stay on top of things, especially if you have a workspace with a large organization, hundreds or even thousands of people inside of a workspace. It can become quite tricky to manage all of that in like after rolling out Langdock after a couple of weeks. So the governance platform is essentially the place, the platform for you to get an overview of what exists, to become aware of what is available in your workspace, what are people doing, then give you the ability to review what has been built and give you overview over different statistics that are important. And then of course also flag or disable things that are not compliant according to your rules. That's basically in a high level view. And today, again, we'll kind of go in a bit more detail on why it exists and what is currently available in the governance platform, and then also give you a live demo of how you review things and give you a couple next steps on where can you start after the session today. In a nutshell, again, governance gives you as the workspace admin one place to review agents and skills and also integrations, which just came today and also will be released very soon or rolled out to more workspaces after today. And then check them against your rules and decide afterwards what happens next with that. Do you want to keep it? Do you want to drop it? Whatever it might be. This is the landscape that you might see as of right now in your workspace. You have different departments. Langdock is usually rolled out to a very large amount of people inside of your organization. So you have different departments, different teams working on the platform, doing all kinds of different things that are relevant for their teams. Not everybody knows what happens in each of the departments. Things are being built maybe multiple times in different places, being used by different people. And it becomes quite messy over time if you don't have one central place where you can administer all of that. And on top of that, it's not only the fact that there's a bunch of things that might be used or unused, but also things where they might not be compliant with whatever internal AI governance policy you have, or potentially also not running fine or being integrated into tools in ways that you didn't intend to. And that's something you want to keep an eye over and get an understanding for if you roll out Langdock and give it to more and more people over time. As of today, and what you will see in your interface, Langdock Governance gives you primarily two things to govern. And again, I will be more on that in a second. The one thing is that you have agents where you can get insights into the ownership, sharing, configuration, analytics, costs, and the version history of the agents that are being built, and also the skills that people have built. And again, skills feed mostly also into agents, but also they are reusable instructions that will also be used inside of your chats. So that's important to remember, just that these two, of course, play together, but also will be more important independently from one another. Compliance rules as of today is the one core asset that, especially if you have hundreds or even thousands of agents in your workspace, you don't want to manually go and click into each agent and understand what is the prompt, what are the knowledge, what's the knowledge that's attached, what integration is it using, but you want to set up a set of automatic rules that your agents and also soon skills can be checked against. And these rules, again, today apply to agents and will soon also be added to skills. We'll go into them also in a second, what they mean, how you set up your own rules. But just know that this is kind of how they come into play and how they are the core, the fundamental stone of like the platform to make sure you can automatically go into a lot of, you can do this governance on large scale. Today in the preview, I will quickly also show you what the governance platform now will offer in the next couple days in terms of integration governance. So whenever your agents or even from a chat, people calling integrations or calling tools, of course, there's data flowing out and flowing back into Langdock. And you also want to get an understanding of what is even being connected, by how many people, how often are these tools getting used, and therefore don't lose track over any kind of data flow that's happening outside of Langdock. To give you a quick idea of what the governance platform as of today offers and what is available if you open up the governance platform after the session today, and also what's coming next. We have already in there agents and skills, as mentioned. The compliance rules, of course, as a core building stone. That you have the ability to approve things, to flag and disable things, and you can also set up admin managed sharing. More on that also in a second. In a nutshell, it's just about you can say for certain agents in your workspace, you want to say, I don't want the user or the creator of that agent, mostly the creator or editor of that agent, to be able to share it with a bunch of people in the workspace, but you as the admin want to be in charge of who can now access this agent that was built, who's allowed to share it and distribute it in your organization. As a preview again, I already have access to our integrations governance tool, which just came out today in a preview. I'll show you quickly what it means in the next couple of days. Again, we will roll it out step by step to more and more workspaces, so you also have access to that. In the next couple of weeks, also there will be workflows will be part of the platform, so you can also then get an overview of all the different workflows that you have built. And we're also working on an MCP gateway, so getting an overview of all the different MCP servers that people have connected inside of your or inside of your workspace. To make it very pragmatic and very simple to understand, to get an idea of what actually happens when you do now a governance process and what that means and what we have seen across a bunch of other workspaces already over the last couple of months. You have a bunch of agents in your workspace. In this case now for a 400-person workspace, let's say you have 140 agents in your workspace. That might even be way higher in your case if you have 400 people in your workspace. But let's say that's as an example, you have 140 in your Langdock account. Then you will see flagged out of those 22 which have at least failed one specific governance rule that you have put into place. And you can then say, out of these 22, I will go into them and check what happened, and then I flag 6 of them need to be flagged for follow-up, and then I also go in there and actually disable one of them. So this is, again, the whole idea of the core idea why we built the governance platform, because you want to narrow this down and get to a point where you at least always are in charge and you know what's happening, and you can go in there and say, we have an AI policy and I also want to start enforcing it, and people shouldn't just do whatever they want in our workspace, but they should follow the rules. And I want to go in and narrow it down to those which I disable, or at least where I say to the owner or the creator of the agent, hey, you have to do something, change please some knowledge that we don't allow, or we don't change out the integrations that you're using here, we're not allowing them yet. That's why you go from a very large amount, you narrow it down to what's really important. Let's do an example for that and jump into Langdock. It's based on one example. So we now jump over to the Langdock workspace, and I will also quickly make this a bit more full screen so you can follow along even easier. So in the first step, let me quickly show you how you even can navigate to the governance platform if you are currently still new to it and you have never played around with it. You can go as an admin, you can go on the top left of your Langdock, in your Langdock interface, and then you navigate to this governance tab where it still says beta until the end of the year. That's why also until the end of the year, the governance platform is completely included in your plan. If you have questions about the pricing plans, you can also check out our pricing page. There you'll find everything else, what happens after the end of the year, but by then you can totally play around here and explore what is available. Once you click on that, you already land automatically on the agents governance page. As I said, agents was the first thing we introduced. That was the most important and most highly requested thing to govern inside of a workspace, especially since agents have become more powerful and they can do more integration tool calls, you can connect MCPs, etc. All of the different things we have released over the last couple of months, agents have become the core thing to keep an eye out on as an admin in a Langdock workspace. What you see in this interface, you can, starting on the top left, you see that there is different tabs that you can go through. One of them is pending review, needs re-review, or having also no owner. These are the 4 things you can navigate on the top level. Below that, you find 4 different filter options. And I'll get to a second why filtering is also quite important, especially now this might not look like you have 85 agents for review, but maybe 400, 500, 800, whatever, thousands of agents for review, which might feel quite daunting if you have never touched this before or you have never really worked with this platform before. That's where the filtering also becomes very important, because of course you can then narrow down to those agents which are really important to first look at. And maybe to make that even, in a visual even more clear, let's say we have this example of how many conversations agents have and how many integrations are connected, or what kind of integrations also connected. Is it integrations that are writing or changing things in different systems, or only integrations that are reading information? Of course, writing or changing is always more important. So that's why this simple visual here is also helpful to just understand these are kind of the two filters that you, if you want to get started with this and you want to get a first idea of what do I even start reviewing, this is why you can kind of get a first starting point with. And now let's say here we have an agent, in this case the Reno support reply agent. So we have this one agent that we built for helping us do customer support replies. That one is used by a lot of people in our workspace and has a lot of messages because there's a lot of support replies coming in every day. And it also has a bunch of integrations into our emailing tools, into our ticketing tools. So it can also read and also write things back to those tools. So that's why it would end up very high on the top right here in this chart as an agent that I would want to review right at the beginning or very fast, because it has potentially the chance of not being compliant if it ever was built not in the right way. So how would you now apply this back in the governance platform, and where would you start? You have, first of all, the filter where you can set or filter out things that have been still pending review. That would just give you the same view as the top here. You can also then quickly check which agents have you actually approved, which ones did you flag, which one were disabled. In the second filter, you can also then say, has any of my compliance rules that I have set up, again, we'll get to them in a second also, what they mean and how you set them up, but is anything here flagged as potentially high risk based on my compliance rules? Then I can filter also agents that are shared with individual people or groups, or I can also filter for agents that are shared with the entire workspace, or again, here also groups separately. So it might be important to just make sure I want to only see those which are available to the entire workspace. That usually infers that there's a lot of people using it or could use it in theory. And then you have this more filter tab where you can also filter out for specific integrations. Then if they have been flagged as high risk in terms of the integrations that were connected, or the type of integrations that are connected, and certain models that the agent is using, labels, or also if the agent has attached knowledge. So that might also be interesting to just check out what you can see here. As from the chart, now we want to also get only those which are high risk. So I also start to filter out all other agents. So now my list went down from a couple 50, 60 agents already to those which are only those which already match my filters. And now finally, I also, let's say, want to, again, apply this principle of those which have a lot of conversations. You can then also sort these columns that are very interesting for you by a certain direction. So here we then get immediately the agent which has been flagged as high integration risk and has a lot of conversations. So now let's say I want to actually go in here and review it. You get an overview on this in this row level table, but then of course I want to go in here and actually review what the agent has done, or how it was built, and what the agent has been, why it has been flagged, and get a feeling for why we actually, why we might need to review this. In this case, I will not do it for this one because that I can see already it's approved. So somebody, in this case myself, before the session, I went in here and said this agent was actually flagged as high integration risk, but I didn't think it is in this case too important, or it was not that critical as I would think. So I approved it before. In the other case, which we mentioned, the customer support agent that I also had built before. Now let me go into that one. This one is also flagged, it's not reviewed yet, so you can see pending review. It was not high risk in terms of compliance because there was no compliance rule, again, more on that in a second, but it was again high risk in terms of the integrations. And now we can see that on this page, we get an overview over the compliance checks at the top, if they have passed. So that's where your compliance rules, you can go into them. You have these different tabs here at the top where you can click through, and also these buttons just bring you to the different tabs. Let's say on the summary for now. And then we get the sharing also here, which is nothing else than bringing you to the sharing page. And here you can already see a sneak peek to the admin managed sharing, which also we'll get into in a second in a bit more detail what that means and how you can set it up. And after that, it looks pretty similar to a normal agent creation page with a bunch of information about the about section from the agent, who's the person who owns this, who's the different editors that were added to the agent. And you can also then go in here and change owners and add, for example, editors to this agent directly from here. which might be useful if you know a person will be leaving a company or changing teams, and thus would not be responsible for this agent anymore. You can go in here and then change it. And on that note, also why we have this no owner tab here at the top, you can then also click on that one. And in case you have, now let me remove the filters again. If we had, for example, an agent where the person who was part of the workspace got removed, or potentially is not part of the workspace anymore, we would leave this agent in this space here, which is not deleted, but you can always then re-add an owner back to the agent that would be responsible of maintaining it moving forward. So just that you be aware of that in case this ever happens, that's where you also can then change it. That was already possible before, but you had to navigate to the workspace settings page. So let me quickly scroll down to the agent here that I was looking into, the support reply agent, and go through other sections that you can also review. So that is here. The next one is the instruction section. Of course, these are the instructions of the agent that the person has written into the agent, how they have used it. So you can also get a feeling for what is this agent doing? Why is it why is it doing a certain thing? Why it might be flagged by the compliance rules that you also have set up, because they also check against the specific instructions that a person has put into an agent. And below that, you find the properties of the agent. So the model, what version it's currently in, what integrations it has connected, what the different skills are that are connected to the agent, and what knowledge is also here attached. And at the bottom, you can also then navigate quickly to the analytics, the cost, and the history of your agents. That's basically the first kind of overview of the main page that you would go through if you decide to, like, say, I want to go through my agent platform. I want to see what the agents are, what they are doing, why are they being flagged as high risk, where's the integrations. That's the first page you essentially start reviewing when you want to get a feeling, overview of the different things that happen inside of your workspace. Now, of course, then the next step is that you would like to also then go in and check for the different compliance rules and say, hey, to the agent owner, I don't like this agent that you created. Can you please remove certain integrations from it? Or change also certain instructions from the system prompt that you don't like. You can then go in and also maintain and manage that directly from the interface. So if I go back into Langdock, you can see at the bottom, so if I go into the full screen here again, you have these different buttons that are available. So approve, flag, and disable. And if you click on them and say, and you can also hover over them to see again what they're doing. So if I hover over approved, record this version as approved and re-enable the agent for use. Add a purely internal node for governance reviewers, owners, editors, and users won't see it. Or if you disable it, it says disable the agent, show the reason to the owner and editors, and send them an inbox notification. And let's say this one, I think I would say, I don't think this agent needs Outlook calendar as an integration. You will then see this person, admin in your workspace, has reviewed this 2 seconds ago and has left the following comment. And now the agent also has in this overview the disable flag. And since I am also the creator of this agent, I can quickly show you what that then did in my, in case of this step that the admin has taken. I quickly jump into the actual agent, which you can find. Yes, so here there's the agent. Now you can see, for me as the person owning this, I see there's a disabled flag now next to the agent here. And if I hover over it, it says the agent is disabled and can't be used. Reason, I don't think this agent needs the Outlook calendar and integration as an integration. So I would go in here and edit it. And you also see at the very top the notification here for the creator of the agent again. And I can see also what's next if I don't know as the creator of what just happened to me and why was my agent disabled. But I would go in and now say, okay, well, then maybe I don't need the Outlook calendar integration. I would remove it. Then I would, the changes are now saved. And now I can update the agent again. And if I now go back and say, I can also click on what next. And as the owner, I would say, it says here, make the required change, then update and publish a new agent version to resubmit it for review. The agent stays disabled until an admin enables it again, and contact the person below. So whoever was the person who disabled the agent in this case would also then see this again, or you could see who the person was and you could reach out to them to ask for a review. So now I switch back to my admin role and I go back into the governance platform. You can see now something happened here in the top, and there is this new tab which needs review. So that's where now the changes, or the agent that was flagged as, or was disabled, somebody has made a change to it. And you can then go in and review it again and see what has changed and if the change is actually applicable. And then if you say, hey, it's fine, I actually now approve this, I say, now it looks good. Then I say confirm approval. It disappears from this needs review page, and I can go back to the main page. And also I would say here, now filter this quickly for approved so I can find it quicker. Now the agent is again approved, and me as the agent owner, people can start using it again. So that's pretty much how the whole flow works if you would go through different, start approving or denying or flagging agents for review. That's pretty much it. Maybe just for a quick, because not that unknown already, because these pages have been known already from the analytics pages. You get this analytics overview here as well for your agents, similar to you on the actual agent page or the agent analytics page. You can see them right here. Same, that one is new because you can also now see the costs that a certain agent has incurred over time, to make sure that you understand also in case certain agents become very important or very much used and also very important, a lot of people start working with them, they can incur a lot of tokens and that does a lot of costs. So you also would want to get an understanding of why is this happening, how's the trend over time, and you can then go in and say to the agent owner, maybe say, can you look at your prompt again? Is everything needed in there? Can you maybe strip down some of the steps that are needed just to make sure the costs don't get out of hand? And here on the last tab, as we now see, also there is now the history of different versions that have been published by the owner. Then you can see actually also that it was disabled. Now a new version was published by me again, and now it's approved. So if in case something happens and you need somebody to understand why an agent was removed or what happened to the agent, you would then go in here and say, yeah, this is the history. Some person has definitely done something inside of it, and I need to do it. I need to do a double check again why this happened. So you have all of the different steps of the different important information right on this page. So far for the agents. Let me quickly jump over again to the slides and just as a summary also give you another overview of what happened and what we just saw. So this agent we just reviewed. It was created by me. It was shared with the entire workspace. It was, in this case, it was passing all compliance checks, and why, we can see that in a second. It was shared with the entire workspace. It had different integrations. It had skills attached, and I, as the admin, was now able to see a summary, to see the compliance checks that have been running. I can see the different people it was shared with, analytics, costs, and we can also see the history of things that have happened with the specific agent. So in one view, this is what you can see for agents. So far for the agent page. Now, of course, in the next step, we want to see what happens now if you have to do this review step, not for one agent, but you have probably hundreds or even thousands of agents that you still have to go through and check for compliance reasons. And that's where, of course, you need a way to somehow automate that in a certain way and to set up rules that not only in retrospect also get checked against your agents, but also moving forward when people will not stop creating agents, so they will go and continue. You also want to make sure that these rules will be checked moving forward, and that's why we have our compliance rules in this case. So for compliance rules, let's make one concrete example. I kind of noted or hinted at that already in the previous example, that for agents and in general, the best practice is that you give them the least amount of permissions that they need to achieve a certain task. So you want to be aware if an agent potentially could do something in a tool, in a connection, an integration that you have inside of your agent that is not necessarily allowed to do, or it shouldn't be able to even do it even by accident. And in this case, you would call it maybe overboard permissions. And that's a typical scenario that you would want to flag out, or at least label as somewhat high risk or medium risk to review it again, and then notify the agent creator or editor also afterwards to say, hey, can you maybe check the integrations again and make sure it doesn't include these 3 integrations that are not necessary, or these 3 actions that are part of the integration, which we don't need necessarily to achieve the task that the agent has. A couple of examples, let's say you have a meeting note summarizing agents, and it would, in theory, we don't even have that scope, but it has a scope like drive, delete, or delete things from a Google Drive, or modify a copy, edit files. In a very extreme case, this is if you also build custom integrations or you have custom MCPs connected, this might be available, these actions, and you would want to rule out that a meeting note summarizer can do something like that. Same thing with a release notes drafter, which has an admin scope on the issue tracker. So we do a lot of release notes when we release new features in Langdock. So also we would want to use agents here that have not by accident the ability to also then change or modify any kind of underlying issues that have been fixed or tickets that have been fixed. It should only be allowed to draft the release notes and put it into the system where we release them. That's all we want to do. And then calendar bot that has unnecessary read or write access to a workspace, also not needed. And on the other side, of course, we want to keep it to the integrations and the actions where we are confident that they are needed to achieve a certain task. These 3 examples are, of course, just illustrative. Important, and I quickly mentioned that already before, these rules that now are set up, they run either on demand. So when you create a rule, you can run them on retrospect across all of your agents, or every time a new agent gets published or changed, something like we did just before, where I'm editing an agent, removing an integration, for example, and click on publish again. That's also when the agent itself or the rule itself will again be checked against the agent. So that's something just to keep in mind. So how do you set this up? Let me go back to the screen here and also make this full screen so you can follow along, because there's a lot of information on this page. We have on this tab on the left compliance rules, 4 different rules which are already enabled, which I turned on for this workspace. The first is prompt efficiency. That one is a bit interesting. I'll show you what it means in just a second. Then we have one for the overboard permissions. That's the one I just mentioned a second ago. Then there's 2 more, which are EU AI regulated, so prohibited AI practice and high risk AI. These rules, if you want to know what they are and also how you would, use them, or why they would potentially fail your agents, is because of those failure conditions, which you can see. So each rule of these is always structured with, you have the title, then you have the configuration, and then the failure conditions. And how you would do it, if you would want to create your own rule, you click at the very top right on new rule. And now you have 2 different options. Either is you start from scratch. You can completely create these failure conditions in your own way, in your own style. You put it in here, you give it a name, a description. You say if this rule hits, how critical is this? And you can again filter this then back down in the overview page, so you can quickly get to those where high or critical rules have been hit. And then you put in your failure condition down here. And once you create it, you can then say, let's run this against all of the agents in our workspace, which of course you might want to do as well when you have finished this. Otherwise, if you don't toggle this on and create it, it will still run, but it will only happen for those agents which moving forward you create. Now for all of the rules that are already in place, what you can then see is on the second tab. Now let me quickly move to the one which we had mentioned already in the example before, is the overboard permission scope. So in this case, we see that there is, or the rule is about to flag any agents where there's too much permissions given based on what the agent is actually supposed to do. So next to the configurations, I can see on the matching tab, I see the different agents that have failed the condition that I have written on the tab before. So now let's say in this meeting notes summarizing agent, I get the same overview that we already saw before. I can see the instructions again. I can see also the integrations that are now here connected. And I can see there's definitely for the fact of summarizing meeting notes. And then I also see that there's things in there which definitely are not necessarily needed for reviewing meeting notes. So I will go in here and say, as the admin, and say, no, this one, can you please remove the Google Drive integration here? Not needed. So this one is again now disabled. This is the same process as we already saw before. And in case there's still other things running also here, you can see also in case there's still a bunch of agents being checked in the same time, you can then click on running. Or if there's been errors also, you would want to go into here and click on and check the different errors that have occurred. That's basically the whole principle. That's what you would then go on a large scale across your workspace and check different agents. And just one illustration here where I wanted to make sure that it becomes quite clear how you can also be creative with these rules, and you don't necessarily have to just do compliance checks. But also one thing that becomes more important is having efficient prompts, or being very, being in this case aware of that tokens can also incur costs. You would then write a rule, something like this, and say you are a prompt efficiency auditor. Your job is to decide whether an agent prompts before it fails an efficiency check, and then there's basically just has a bunch of instructions like check the prompt for any filler instructions, for any types of prompt snippets that are very typical or maybe outdated, that are not necessarily needed anymore for writing effective prompts today. Then you could go checks for disproportionate length. So you get the point of why this prompt might be useful or might be interesting to check for agents. And then I had this one agent here, which was just supposed to be drafting emails, and it has a bit of an over-exaggerated prompt that can happen, that people write these, especially when you start writing prompts with AI. They might not know how to prompt well, especially if you use maybe a faster model that is not necessarily thinks a lot about what the actual task should be. So this prompt was created and has a lot of unnecessary rules in there that the newer models these days don't necessarily need. So in this case, again, this was also flagged by my rule. I only put it to medium criticality because it's not, I wouldn't necessarily turn off the agent immediately, but I just want to be aware there's certain agents failing this, and I would go in here and then get this overview. So far for the two compliance rule checks. So we now have basically the two components that were important to understand, or at least to see, which are possible. And in a summary, this is again what we would do here. If we see or have now compliance rules that run on a large scale, you can then filter down the agents or the overviews to what agents you would like to review, which ones you can then go in and say, I want to approve a certain agent, I want to flag them, or I want to disable them. And it makes it very fast to then skip through the different rows that you have still to go through, the different agents that have not been reviewed yet, and then assign them the different labels. And just as a recap also, and just to make sure that also that is clear, when you disable an agent, it doesn't delete the agent. It's just a pause to the agent until the owner of the agent has made a change that you requested from the person, and then the person can publish a new version and make sure the agent gets back up once you review it after it's done. One small thing that might be interesting, and we heard a lot of people also requesting from us, is the ability to say for certain agents, I don't want this agent to be shared necessarily by everyone. And let me also again go into the full screen mode here that you can follow along. So if you go onto the sharing tab, there's the switch called admin managed sharing, and you can turn that on. And as it says here, is turn this on to keep sharing changes in governance. Owners and editors can still see and access the builder, but they cannot change who is able to access this agent. It cannot be accessed by the whole workspace, by individual people. That ability will be turned off for the creator of the agent. So this might be useful if you have people that are building a lot of agents, but you also saw them maybe misusing it or sharing it with a too broad audience that is not necessarily approved, you can then go in here and turn on this up and manage sharing. Small setting, but that can be quite powerful if you want to be in control of that. So just to wrap up, maybe also the second two more tabs, and I'll just quickly show you them inside of the platform as well. I think we not necessarily need the slides here. We have the ability for, or now since the last couple of weeks, we also released not only the compliance checks for agents that I just showed you, but now also for skills and integrations was just still feature flagged for me, so you get access the next couple hours or days. So for skills, similar principle applies to the agents in the beginning. This is especially important for now, for raising awareness of what skills are being created, who are they shared with, who created them, how many people are actively using them, maybe are they also attached to certain agents or integrations, do they have certain files attached. This is for now mostly about visibility, and you would then soon get the ability also to run compliance checks on these skills. That's something we're still building, but for now, just know that you can also get awareness of these and then see what is happening inside of your workspace in terms of skills. And same principle applies also to the integrations tab. That's also merely currently for raising awareness of what integrations are currently being used, which are enabled, are active. And if this loads in a second, I can also show you how it looks like. Maybe we need a couple. Okay, there we go. So this now is how the page would look like. You can see in general, like high-level analytics of how many tool calls have there been, how many connections are there, how many agents are using your integrations. And then for each, again, you get the ability to filter it down to what is important. And especially often we hear that there's a lot of MCPs connected and you would like to see which are also custom MCPs that people have connected and you can then also review. And inside of those individual pages, you also can get the ability to see analytics on the integrations. You can see who has connections with those, what agents are using it. And then for certain integrations, we also recently released the ability to go into different scopes and turn down scopes that you think are not required or you wouldn't want to allow people to interact with. In the case of the Microsoft integration, this is quite common. So also be aware that you could find this setting now also here. It was already available before, but now we also moved it and made it available inside of this view. So that's just a quick sneak peek. Again, this will be released next couple of days to more and more workspaces. Just be aware that this will be coming and that you can also then get some awareness about what is available right on this page. All right, so maybe to recap what is next and what's the next steps now after you have joined today. I think for now, after the session, the best thing is now also share a link again to where the webinar, where the platform is and how you can access it at the next slide. But just choose a couple people that you trust and that currently administer your Langdock workspace and give them access to the platform. Make sure that they can also see everything there and then start checking and filtering out those agents which are flagged as high risk integration-wise or high risk from the compliance rules. Then go in there and start reviewing them. Start sitting down maybe once for a session of maybe 1 hour or so and going through the large batch of the first agents that are the most critical ones that are used by a lot of people. Just make sure that they are fine and nobody is like doing something that you wouldn't want to have people doing in your workspace. And then in the next step, I wouldn't necessarily do this at the beginning, but you can start thinking about now, since starting today, about what compliance rules might be interesting for you that are custom, that are not part of the templates. And I think I can quickly show again what I meant by the templates because I didn't even show all of them. But if you go into the compliance rules and you click on new rule, you can see there's in total 3, 6, 9, 12 templates that you can go through and get a feeling for what we just propose you to check in your compliance rules right there. So then just sit down and think what might be interesting. Maybe take this idea of the prompt efficiency compliance rule also as an idea that you could start implementing. And of course, then it's important because people will not stop creating agents and also not stop creating integrations and skills. So you would need to do this probably on a more regular basis and set up the compliance rules, of course, in a way that they run automatically and they run also good. So you can check if your rules are actually hitting those agents which you would like to flag out. Of course, that takes a bit of skill that you need to also practice and improve your prompting in that case, just to make sure that the skills and the compliance rule itself is well written and flags what's important in these agents. That's something that comes with practice. Just start setting up a couple first rules and then get a feeling for how well they work. So as the last slide, and then I'll take a couple more minutes also to review the Q&A and the top voted questions in case they haven't been answered yet. But where do you go next? And maybe also let me make this full screen one more time so you can also scan those and see all of the links well. Of course, go ahead and try the governance platform if you're on a dedicated deployment. Of course, you need to switch out the app.langdock.com and then put the governance tag behind whatever your domain is in your deployment. But if you're on the cloud, just go to app.langdock.com/governance or scan the QR code. In the second step, you could also go in there and read our documentation page on the governance platform. All of the things that I said today, most of it is also written there again. So if you want to get some answers to more questions that you have, or also see the Q&A that I will post after the webinar there, you can also find that on the documentation page. And if you haven't yet or don't know that we have a YouTube channel, feel free to follow that, because we also will release the webinar there in a playlist. So you can follow along on YouTube always. And finally, that's also something rather new. In our resource hub, we have a bunch more resources than just the webinar recordings that are interesting for you as admins to also check out and go through, and then just use them for making your rollout at Langdock even more successful.